Okay.
I love that.
Oh, you know what? This is not live. Hi, everyone. I am JoyWilliams. And as I've shared with you before.
Start that with a joke. Because that really is. Did you see how she snuck that in on us? Okay, this is not live. Okay, you psych us up.
It's like
your heart back in your chest. You're like, my man. Like, thank you.
So I was just prefacing to them that we were going live, but then I forgot that YouTube doesn't allow you to go live unless you have 1,000 subscribers, and I'm not there yet. So this is going to be recorded, and then we're going to upload it, but I still want your comments. So again, I'm JoyWilliams. I am a current student, divinity student, and I am almost done, but I also have a master's in public health and a master's in dance choreography. And my co-peers that are here with me are super, I don't even know, like, we didn't talk about your titles or how you want to be talked, but let me tell you about them and why I wanted to interview them both. I have met each of them through very important and meaningful moments in my life, and both of them have the exact commonalities that I have that I'm very passionate about: holistic health, helping other people, preaching of the good news, understanding God, intimate relationship with God, and wanting to cultivate that in others and with others. And so I preface this with all the master degrees to only say that you don't need that to be a good person or either to be passionate about what we're passionate about. Those degrees actually just really get you in the door of what man has constructed within different societies and cultures. Yeah, and credibility. So they're important on one level, but on the most meaningful level, which is actually doing the work and doing it well, it doesn't really matter. But my sisters here that I have met, while we have taken different paths, career-wise, we are now converging on something that I think has brought much meaning to my life, and I can see that it's also something that they're very passionate about. So I will pass it on and let them introduce themselves for a second. So, Lauren, would you like to take it away?
Oh, crap. You know what?
Okay. Well, hi. So I'm Lauren. Are we going through degrees? And
No, I just, you don't have to. I mean, you can if you want to.
I don't have to. So I guess letters aren't important. I guess, like I said, my name is Lauren. I do work in healthcare. I guess specifically behavioral health and holistic health.
And she's a psychiatric nurse, which I found to be super helpful. Just in my own path and dealing with mental diagnoses in my own family. And so I'm excited to continue this partnership. And she also has training in HIV. So the panel that Kimberly and I have been working on, I'm so excited that Lauren may be joining with a healthcare perspective to that. And Kimberly, my dear sister,
as she said, my name is Kimberly. That's Kimberly,
Empress.
not Kimberly. But I do go by Empress. That's the name that God had gave me, so I do go by that most of the time, especially with people I'm more intimate with. I've been a certified parent educator. I've done a lot of things, but mostly all of it has to do with holistic living and actually what I call kingdom living.
Yeah.
Because that's all it is. It's just learning. It's us learning how to integrate kingdom living back into a lifestyle. So I went and did a lot of things to do just to get the credibility, but I'm gifted in that I have gifts in those areas. So I've gone to school. I'm 24 hours away from getting my bachelor's. I have an associate in arts degree. So I've done things, and currently I'm doing things like I'm working with children now at the Boys and Girls Club in Greensboro. That's one thing I do. And I'm also, I work with Care Links as well. And I go out and help and just, do aid with people. I like working one-on-one with people because it gives me the opportunity kind of to spread a holistic message. Mm-hmm. So, and I think I'm here more for the life experience things too, because I've had to practice a lot of this. Mm-hmm. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 1998, and I've had to put a lot of this into practice to heal from a lot of traumatic experiences that caused it. So I think that's what they mean when they say you don't need a degree for this. Because to be honest with you, when God calls you for something, He will He will be the one to qualify you for it.
Yeah. And what's so amazing about Empress is that she has taught me through her blogs, her writing, through just talking on the phone with her, and also just being in the room and just experiencing how important it is to have that intimate relationship with God and to know thyself. To know yourself and to pull the wisdom that God has given each and every one of us from down in your belly and out. I remember there are times that I would be talking and I would ask her a question like I'm so angry and I don't know why. And she was like, you know why you're angry. You just need to sit in it. And so her wisdom has encouraged me in a way that no book ever could, no professor ever will. And it's just that type of wisdom that only is lived and only it's only cultivated through a relationship with God, and it's given out of love. And so I am grateful.
And through my own mistakes.
And so I'm really grateful to be able to partner with Empress on the projects that we have moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Yeah, so am I. And it's so cool because all three of us, we really want to spread the message of health. Of education in specific ways, but we all have like HIV as an interest. We all have relationships as an interest. We all have making your own body products and holistic living as an interest.
I really think all those things are really just interconnected. But not only that, but you know what I really also believe? I believe that when you when you have Christ in your life and the Holy Spirit is guiding you, I believe when you have an intimate relationship with Him, you start to become the Proverbs 31 woman. I think she's a description, not something that we obtain or try to strive for. I think that's a description of what a woman does. And that woman's productive. She was making things. She was selling things. She was doing the same. I think she was holistic. I mean, just think about it.
She definitely was. And that's a great point, that it's a woman that it's not something that you earn. It's just something that you become.
Exactly.
But I think it's something that it's someone that you become because Christ is that constant encourager. Because no great woman can do that by herself. Like in order to be able to have those relationships in the marketplace to where she sold her sashes or how she was able to cook and prepare for the winter, she had to have people that were encouraging her, that were blessing her, and that followed
support.
That were able to obey and listen to her direction. So she had to be someone who was kind-hearted in the home. And I feel like Proverbs 31, it is a lie.
I mean, when you think about it, because people think kind-hearted and they just think this person who is just meek and mild, but really kind-hearted is a person who has had to deal with pride and had to deal with certain things. Because I mean, you in the house and somebody, you know what I'm saying? Not today. I mean, she's not sitting around like this because she's not a passive female.
Right.
Not to be out there doing business and doing things like this. This is pretty much when you would see it and read about it, you would think this is an alpha female.
Yeah.
Because you've been in the business where we've been out there and talked to people. You can't be a meek and mild person and talk to a lot of people. You have to be bold enough to say things, you know, because people don't listen. You know, and a lot of times, and you have to be able to say, or they'll overlook you or whatever, especially being a woman. You know?
And especially being a marginalized woman. Lauren, I remember a conversation that we had, and we were talking about race. Yeah. And it was a mixed company. It was black and white people there at the table. And there was a white woman who mentioned something about how discrimination that she has felt. And I remember your response has stayed with me because you were not afraid to call out, but listen, like I remember we were all knitting and like we were all working with our hands. No, this was like a year and a half ago. Maybe it was a while ago. But I just remember that conversation because I was just so struck by your boldness to say, no, this is like, we're talking about a racial construct, which, and you didn't miss a beat, like in your knitting.
But, you know, I feel like that comes easier when that's the reality that you live in. You understand? Some people have to learn that and some people live that. And I think a lot of, I guess I hear it said between, you know, people of a certain demographic or a certain group, oh, it's not my job to educate and all that. And I mean, it's not. But at the same time, I think that honestly,
I differ on that one. But go ahead.
Honestly, in your heart when you want to see things change, essentially you have to give your input. That's where you find yourself in the situations where you have to say something, or otherwise they won't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
No, just the part about it's not our job to educate. I think it is the responsibility. So much is given, much is required. When you learn things, there are people out there who don't know those things. And sometimes people don't know them, not because, but because they're not commonly talked about and they're not said. We take it as an imposition. We take it as pushing our opinion or doing whatever. But it's not giving them a choice. There was a lot of things whenever I was being growing up and trying to learn what the right thing was. I didn't know what it was because of the lack of the people who should have been saying something. Because there's a lot of people out there who are running their mouth and they need to be quiet.
They do.
So there was a lot of misinformation. And then that's why she's commending you for your boldness. Because it takes boldness to do it, because you weren't pushing your opinion, you were giving her a different viewpoint. And that's what education does.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we do need to take responsibility, like I said, to make changes and make things known. I think more so what I'm saying, our responsibility when people have the resources to know things, especially like in this age where we have YouTube, we have books, we have classes, we have all of this. If you really want to know something, you can go out there and find it out.
But you don't know that you don't know it until somebody says
for
something.
situations like that.
Just like what you were saying, because you said, see, she was saying it from her perspective, but she had no idea from yours until you said it. And I have ran into people who were even prejudiced, but they were prejudiced because they had no idea.
But I think also, I also think that what Lauren is lifting up, and this is something that we talked about in a cultural dynamics class, and I hadn't heard, specifically in talking about race, I hadn't heard a white person say, well, I had never had the opportunity to learn from a black person. But as we were talking as a whole class, and we had gotten information that we were using a tool that had been used around the world, and this tool was to highlight the point of the fact that we each have personal responsibility in what we choose to know and what we choose to not know. So essentially, this tool is saying if you're ignorant about something, it's because you're choosing to go into that pathway and to keeping yourself closed off.
I kind of don't agree. You know why? Because you have to see. My grandfather had this saying: "You can't see your own butt." The reason I say that is because we negate how necessary it is for relationships. See, me and you was talking, and you was telling me about being self-aware. I'm self-aware not because I gain the knowledge of self. I gain the knowledge of relationship. Because it's through your eyes. It's through having relationship. It's through meeting different people. Sometimes, like for instance, we could cut off relationship with people. I had a situation where I started going to a white church. How many black people do you know are just gonna go into a white church? A predominantly white church, and you're the only one that's there that's black. You don't run into that often.
And not from Africa. Not from
exactly. I'm not from Africa. This was in Lexington, North Carolina. You know what I'm saying? So I started going, and I started, I didn't have a way. And there was this family that agreed to come pick me up. Now, what I did not know is, and I didn't find this out until I was living with them, is that the father was prejudiced that when he first started coming. He had ran into situations where he would try to befriend black people. He said he was curious and he wanted to know, and he had been shunned and he had been treated bad. So he became prejudiced because he said they would treat me like I was personally responsible for slavery, you know. And he didn't understand certain things. And it wasn't until through relationship that we was all sitting around talking that we started to realize, and I started to explain to him what the anger was coming from and what it was like to live as a black man or live as a black person. They had no idea, and they would have never thought, you know, because that's not their life and their experience. Sometimes we got to cut people slack and understand that it's not because they don't want to know. We have to take our own responsibility and find out, have we done anything? Have we made ourselves available? Have we made ourselves open? Have we made ourselves to that point? Because we want them to go find out. But the reality is, we're not willing to educate sometimes. We're not willing to let down that guard. We're not willing to be vulnerable sometimes. We're not willing to have a relationship with those people sometimes. And sometimes they are afraid because how do we feel about them? Does that come across as a whole, you know? And if we want that stuff to heal, we have to look at it on both ends. In a relationship, whenever like if we're in a dysfunctional relationship, both of us are sick. And racism is a dysfunctional relationship between black and white people. Both parties are sick. So they need to be open, but we need to be open too. And that's what I'm saying is we don't educate like that because we've even lost educating our own people and our own selves.
Yeah.
So, but we need to be more realistic about that. We're not open like that anymore. You know, and that we are dealing with some trauma and hurt, and that's probably why. You know, I'm not saying there's not a reason. I'm just saying it's an observation that I have and something I've experienced even within my own culture because that attitude is how people have treated me. Ever since I was a kid, I should already know, and if I want to know, then I need to go, and why ain't I looking for it? I had no idea.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think, well, maybe this is part of both are true. Maybe we can say, but again, I think it may fall within the context because what I don't know all the particulars of the individual that you talked about, but just from my experiences and some of the white people that I know who have said that they have tried to have relationships with people, quote, of color, it has been in a way that it did not respect the boundaries. And so to them, it's like, well, I'm just trying to be friends. So I'm like, hey, what's up, dog? Or like trying to use the language. And it's a different, and that's not all the case.
That's
not
ignorance right there.
But I'm saying, like, so I think it really depends on what the person is coming with. But what this tool was highlighting is that if you really want to have a relationship across cultures, across differences, and race is not the only difference. Like, we're also talking about economic and gender and cross-cultural and all of these other different dynamics of differences. That if you really want to have that and you want it to be something meaningful in your life, there are opportunities to pursue that, to get that experience in a way that that translates into something meaningful.
But you know, if you're not saved, the Word of God says that you can't comprehend certain things. You know, and that's what our belief is. You know, and if our belief, I can't generalize and say everybody because everybody isn't like me and everybody isn't like us. You know, they have a different mindset. When you get saved, you have to renew your mind. That's something that becomes a lifestyle for us. That something becomes what we do. But in the world, that's just not the characteristics of that animal. And even the Bible even talks about that. That's why I say that. That's what I believe about education. That's why we have YouTube channels. See, that stuff is out there because we are teaching. See, don't confuse. See, the reason I said that is because you're not living by that. You are doing that. You did it that day. That's what I'm pointing out, is that more people need to go by that example. You know, and become a little bit more open the way you were. And to become educators and look at themselves as educators. Because when I was a certified parent educator, you know what my job was? To go out and teach parents that they are the first and best teachers of their children. All of us teach. And that's what I was meaning. Is that all of us teach every day, and we should look at ourselves as educators because I think it makes us take a different responsibility and look at ourselves differently. It makes us a little bit more responsible about what we say, how we say it, and what we put out there.
And to own it.
Yes, exactly.
You're right.
So, and I'm saying if people look at it and say, well, it's not my responsibility, they kind of do it across the board, not just...
That's the point.
Yes,
that is the point of the
they
tool.
do it everywhere.
That is the point of the tool.
And that's why I said, that's why I was saying that just basically verbiage-wise, that we are, in a sense, all educators. And that people need to kind of start looking at themselves that way, because even if you're not a teacher and you're not a pastor or you're not a this, you're teaching somebody. And if you take that and look at it, and somebody told me this, I was the person who said, oh no, but when they said it, I started being proved wrong, because God kept putting me in situations where I said, oh, it's my thinking of what I think an educator is that kind of was tainting it.
That's the problem.
Versus that.
I do agree with that too. And I don't want to put words into your mouth. And so maybe you can just clarify if I was off. But I still think that if I understood what Lauren was saying, and what the tool was getting at, is that in spite of people having to educate, there is a responsibility that we all can own
to go after it and to accept it.
Yeah, and here's an example that I'm thinking of. It's like in the Bible when the was it Philippi who was walking along, and there was a centurion who was reading the Bible. I'm going from memory, so I could be totally wrong. But there was somebody. There was somebody in the Bible.
I like her disclaimer. Okay. Look, we can go back.
There was somebody who was trying to read the Bible who didn't understand it. And so someone came along and said, "What are you reading?" He was like, "Well, how can I understand this? I don't know the language." And then he explained it. The point to that, which I think the tool is getting at, which is what I think you were saying, is that if an individual, even though they don't understand something that's around them, they will still put themselves in a position to be open, like you said, to be open for instruction.
I wasn't disputing what she said.
Sure,
per se. I was just that
I got
point,
you.
just that little thing about just the word, just that I was saying. I think all of us are educators.
Yeah,
I really agree with her point. Totally. Yeah.
And likewise, I think it's a issue not just with this, with a lot of things, but is that people make issues black and white when really there's a gray.
Yeah.
Just how that person has a responsibility to seek out knowledge. It's our responsibility to be educators too.
Exactly.
I think a lot of it gets in, am I supposed to meet you halfway?
Yeah.
Or 95% of the way?
And
or what if I'm tired?
Or
what if I heard the same thing over and over
and I don't know if you guys have ever heard people say that people withhold that knowledge. They really do not. They don't want to give that education sometimes, and we're not looking at really why they're not doing it, because they don't want to see that it's that Jonah thing, where he didn't want to go to Nineveh. He didn't want them to get it.
Yeah. But that's a different issue. That's a different issue.
Though. But I think sometimes it's because people aren't looking at themselves as educators and taking the responsibility of it. In a normal life, because I really ran into this a lot where I would say, well, why didn't you tell me? But that ain't none of my business.
Is it not really?
But I was like, even when I was like 15 and 14, a kid and doing this and certain things, and I'm like, but I had no idea. Why wouldn't you tell me? You know? And I'm like, I only tripped up because I didn't know. And people, I think it's gotten to that place where we've really gotten away from that. And I'm a word person. I am. I'm very. And my kids will tell you, and my daughter, I don't. There's certain music I won't let her listen to because it says, like, there's one that says, "I'm a dead man walking." I said, "Oh no, we're not singing that." We're not saying that.
I liked your point about both parties being sick. Like, we were using it in terms of race, but I think it could, like you said, if you're like that in one area of your life, chances are you're like that in many areas of your life.
Well, it's universal law.
Universal, yes. And one of the, I forgot my point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it. Well, it'll come back. But let's also, because we're gonna wrap it up soon. Sadly, I this is what happens. We decided to talk about relationships, and here we are talking about.
But it just grows. That's why it's like, where does this
it's
go to?
Yeah, it's so good. I love it.
This shouldn't be our only time. I really think we should do this more.
Yeah, we should definitely do it more.
I love talking to y'all.
Yeah, well,
you can talk such intelligent stuff, and I'm like, you feed my brain. My brain just
yeah. Well, check out. So Empress has a blog. She's writing on my blog, but she actually has started her own blog, and so I think she's
on her page. It's on her blog. It's not even separate.
But support her because she has steps that God has laid before her that she's walking into. And so you can go to, I'll put it in the comments, but it's www.healingjoyministries.wordpress.com. There's a lot of dots in there, but I'll put it so you can read it and click on it.
She's so sweet. She gave me her whole blog.
But it's actually been a benefit to me because in this past year, you have gotten a quarter of the views.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she just, like, she's only written like 3 blogs. Like,
Wow.
just got on there and already are
Oh my
quarterly.
gosh,
Yeah.
don't make me cry on this.
Yeah, so
Oh my
that's,
gosh.
yeah, so, and you
That
even
is
told me
encouraging.
that, that God has already put, like, things inside of you to walk in steps. And so, but I really do think, like, all of this, so Lauren's going to have a YouTube channel. She already has a website, and we'll put that in the comment section too. So I'm really excited for what God is doing in us, through us. And
yeah, and I want to in the future too, but at the same time, you might get a repetitive thing because I probably just have them on my show all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I would love that though, for real, because I'm like, y'all interesting already, and I want to know more because y'all have no idea what you see, because all you see is this. You know, you don't. I walked into this room and this is Lauren's room, and I'm trying to tell you, it's like fascinating in here. I had like 1,000 questions about her. I'm like, ooh. Yeah, she's like uber organized. I'm like, oh my God.
And in fact, I'll put her website and hopefully contact information because Lauren is starting an outreach, going to different communities, to churches, to groups. I'm talking about anxiety and depression, and she, like I said before, she's a psychiatric nurse. And she is so passionate about getting people well to the point where they get to stay and stay where they most can be productive without having unhealthy ways of coping and escaping, like drugs or alcohol, or unhealthy behaviors with risky sex or other type of risky behavior. So I'm excited for Lauren to be able to do what God has called her to do, which is absolutely amazing. So final words. What are some final thoughts or comments that you want to offer people?
Go first, Empress. We're going this
She don't look as bold as she is. She don't look as bold as she is, but she's bold like a lion. I'm trying to tell you. Oh my God.
She's looking at you.
I'm like, oh, she's going first. All right. Yeah. I don't know. I thought I was going to play off of Lauren.
Okay, well, I'll go first then. I guess she's passing it back. I guess, ending thoughts. I guess, like I said, bringing everything in together. I think a lot of situations in life don't always make them black and white. You know, yes, we have that personal responsibility, but also, you know, take a look at yourself, or the other end, take a look at yourself and see what responsibility you have in situations and meet in the middle. You know, the weight isn't always on one person. If we're really living like a community like we should, certain, I guess, bouts of knowledge, and some people know things that other people don't. And that's just the way it is. And the only way that people will find things out is through relationships and living in community.
Yeah.
So basically, everyone just do your part. It's not just a one-sided responsibility. We all need to meet in the middle with each other, I guess.
Beautifully said.
And she's in the middle.
Yeah.
There we go. How about that?
And so I really like that. Yeah, I agree with her on that. I really do. I think that because it's in relationships that we can see ourselves. We can see our mistakes, and we, you know, and it's not those relationships where we're similar. It's those, a lot of times, where we're the opposite. You know, those most challenging relationships, we get to see ourselves. You know, and I honestly, I challenge people because, you know, I really think that if you really want to live kingdom living, and I say that because it is, if you go on the Word, God already has that stuff there, and with the Holy Spirit, you can do it. I don't think you could. I think it's impossible for us to try to do it without it. I think sometimes we try to do stuff in our own power, and I say that because there's a lot of people out there who are not saved, who haven't given their life to Christ. Well, that's part of what it makes it so hard, because you don't have that, and when you get saved, Jesus left and said, I send back a comforter, I send back someone. So we are in constant relationship. You know, we don't just hear those negative voices and our voice, we also hear his voice. And he always makes more sense than we do. You know, so it makes relationships better, because I promise you that in all my relationships, if the Holy Spirit hadn't been there, I wouldn't be able to heal at all. There's no way, because how could I forgive?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about race, but really they're just ministered to me in my family relationships where I feel very strong in my stance about a particular issue, but it's encouraging me to continue to be self-reflective, but also my family looks at this, that there's only so much I can do without their input and their relationship. And like you said, it takes two to communicate and to meet in the middle. And so I pray that in all of my relationships, that would be the case, because I aim to have positive, thriving relationships in all areas of my life. And I can only do that if other people are also willing to give to that.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being a part of my thriving relationship.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I love you all dearly, and I'm excited for the future. Thank you all for joining.
I love you already.
Yeah. All right. Bye. Mwah. Love ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.